The only other summer vegetable left to plant in my garden now is some beans. A few years ago I bought what was labelled as a dwarf bean and planted it, and noticed it just kept going up and up and up, and it was obviously not a dwarf bean but a climbing bean. Had to create a climbing structure for it on the spot, which is not that easy when you've planned for dwarf beans. But I actually found it a really nice bean. So since then I've been keeping my own seed and growing this climbing bean. Climbing beans are really good for a smaller space because they're using the vertical space rather than your ground, and much easier to pick too. And I find this bean, providing you keep it picked and pick the old ones off, keeps cropping over quite a long period and is a really tasty bean. I've prepared the ground here, which had grown kale for the last year. The kale's been growing here and it's now more like trees than vegetables. By simply cutting it off at ground level, scraping away any weeds there, and then topping it off with a generous layer of compost. No digging at all. I'm finding in these raised beds that I can do that, and it's quite successful. For a climbing bean you need a good structure. This is not really high enough. I'm going to have to add some strings at the top because it likes to go quite high. You can use a teepee or something along those lines if you haven't got this type of thing. So I'm simply going to put a little furrow in the ground along this side. Now I found when you grow a climbing plant, be it peas or beans, that it's a really good idea to plant them on the side that you get the prevailing wind from. If you plant them on the other side, as they come up, the wind tends to be blowing them away from your trellis and it doesn't work that well. Whereas if you put them on the wind side, then the wind is blowing them on the trellis and they begin to grow really well. Now I kept these beans in their pod, which is probably a bit unusual. Normally you'd take them out, but they've actually kept really well. The pods were really dry. I'm planting them fairly generously along here. Look, there'll probably be more than I need. Germinating beans sometimes is a little bit difficult. You sometimes get a few misses, and so it's often good to put a few more in than you need. Now it's said with beans that you should plant them into moist soil and not water them until they actually come out of the ground. Now this compost is only just moist. Probably could be watered, but there is rain expected tonight, quite a bit of it, so I'm not going to water them at all. So I'll just cover those up and await them coming out of the ground in a week or two's time. This is not a lot of climbing beans here. You could grow a lot more. In our family it's principally myself that likes to eat beans, and the children still don't eat a lot yet. My wife is not very keen on them. So I find that this is more than sufficient for our needs.